Hey friends, what's good? Derek here from BOMSocks with more BOM-Bites, where we feast upon the words of Christ one bite at a time. So as we're getting into chapter 3 of Alma, we got to backtrack to Alma chapter 2. These enemies of Christ that we have talked about, Nehor and Amlici, they cause a ton of problems for the saints in these chapters. They have a war. In fact, in verse number 18 of chapter 2, it says it is a great slaughter. The next verse, we lose almost a combined 20,000 people on these sides right here, most of them going towards the Amlicites. But the Nephites lose quite a few as well. In fact, later on, the Lamanites join forces with the Amlicites, and they go back against the Nephites, and Alma himself pleads to the Lord to give him strength so that he can be an instrument in the service of God. He's like, look, spare me today, and I want to make sure that I'm continuing to serve. He ends up slaying Amlici. What a crazy chapter as we get into now chapter 3, which is the aftermath of all of this. And sadly, the effects of Nehor and Amlici, even though these guys are long gone, it still continues. Verse number 4 of chapter 3, the Amlicites were distinguished from the Nephites, for they had marked themselves with red in their foreheads, after the manner of the Lamanites. Nevertheless, they had not shorn their heads like the Lamanites. So the Lamanites had the bald heads. These guys are marked in their forehead. So the goal was to distinguish themselves from others. And you go down in the next several verses, and they literally do mark themselves to set themselves apart from other individuals. Now, the word distinguish is an interesting word. It literally means to have identifying characteristics that's going to set you apart from different people. Now that can create a great division, but I would submit to you that that might not be a bad thing, and I want to kind of throw a positive spin on this. Back in May of 2022, President Nelson gave a wonderful talk. In fact, arguably, it might be his best talk he has ever given. It is called Choices for Eternity. If you have not read it, I would make sure you bookmark that and bring it up to the top of your list of talks to study from Russell M. Nelson, Choices for Eternity to the Young Adults of the Church. It is remarkable. Speaking of this idea of distinguishing ourselves, I want you to see what President Nelson says about this. So go ahead and watch this.
In 2006, when I married Wendy, I was in for several surprises, most of them quite wonderful. One of those surprises was the number of clothing items she owned that displayed a logo. Universities from which she graduated, places she had traveled, and so forth. Whenever she wore one of those items, I teased her by saying, "Who are you advertising today?" She invited me to join in the fun. Labels can be fun and indicate your support for any number of positive things. Many labels will change for you with the passage of time, and not all labels are of equal value. But if any label replaces your most important identifiers, the results can be spiritually suffocating. For example, if I were to rank in order the designations that could be applied to me, I would say, first, I am a child of God. I'm a son of God. Then, a son of the covenant. Then, a disciple of Jesus Christ and a devoted member of his restored church. Next would come my honored titles as a husband and father, then apostle of the Lord Jesus Christ. All other labels that have applied to me, such as medical doctor, surgeon, researcher, professor, lieutenant, captain, PhD, American, and so forth, would fall somewhere down the list. Now let us turn the question to you. Who are you? First and foremost, you are a child of God. Second, as a member of the church, you are a child of the covenant. And third, you are a disciple of Jesus Christ. Tonight I plead with you not to replace these three paramount and unchanging identifiers with any others, because doing so could stymie your progress or pigeonhole you in a stereotype that could potentially thwart your eternal progression.
I love that. So President Nelson really asks us to distinguish ourselves or set ourselves apart in a world that is focused and obsessed with labels. He says, you focus on these three things. You focus on being a child of God, you focus on being a child of the covenant, and you focus on being a disciple of Jesus Christ. Let those be your identifiers. Let those be the things that distinguish you. So these are some things that can positively distinguish us as believers in Jesus Christ. I remember seeing a cool little picture one time, and I thought this was funny. It said, if you got arrested for being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to prove it? Meaning, is there enough to distinguish you from other individuals? Now, one of the things I've written in my scriptures here by this right here, with this idea of distinguishing ourselves, we as members of the church are supposed to distinguish ourselves, not by our looks. Everybody looks different. You guys know this. Looks are not an accurate description of who we are because those things change. Our looks can change. You can be one way and then 5 years later be completely different as far as your looks go. Looks are not an accurate describer of us as members of the church. But those three identifiers, the child of God, the child of the covenant, and a disciple of Jesus Christ, should never change. And that influence can be even more lasting than those of Nehor and Amlici. And those three identifiers can definitely have an eternally positive effect on other individuals. So I love this idea. Now, in spite of what the Amlicites are trying to do, putting a positive spin on that, we are to set ourselves apart as well. If we want to make a difference in this world, then we've got to be different from the world. Anyway, cool little message in this chapter, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and thanks for sharing these messages. We're so grateful that you do that. As always, if you like what you see, click the like button. And if you haven't already, you've got to go check out our amazingly comfortable gospel-themed socks at BOMSocks.com. Godspeed. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.